Hello, I'm Shane M. Nygaard, and welcome to 2026 Pluto, Uranus, Neptune and Saturn, Fire Burn and Cauldron Bubble, where I reflect on the major astrological transits of 2026. The essay for this can be found on my new Mythic Currents Substack at mythiccurrents.substack.com or linked below. The World Bewitched, Macbeth, Orwell, The Sky's Inversion. The world feels bewitched again. As Pluto descends through Aquarius, Uranus crackles through Gemini, and Neptune ebbs into Aries, the air itself seems to chant the witch's opening warning from Macbeth. Fair is foul, and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. What once appeared stable now flickers. What once seemed marginal suddenly stands center stage. James Hillman reminds us that in Pluto's underworld, all is stripped away and life is upside down. And with Pluto excavating the collective field, that inversion has become unmistakably public. Not a private psychological descent, but a societal one, even global. Into this atmosphere of reversals, Orwell's words in 1984 rise like a modern witch's chorus. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. And beneath that, the deeper spell. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. These are not merely dystopian slogans. They are the linguistic architecture of a Pluto in Aquarius era, where narratives mutate faster than they can be verified, and where Uranus in Gemini doubles and redoubles every meaning until truth becomes a hall of mirrors. The air signs carry the distortion like weather, viral, mimetic, contagious. The Cauldron of 2026, Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And now, into this already boiling atmosphere, Saturn and Neptune strike their conjunction in Aries. This is the moment when the Macbeth witch's cauldron itself ignites. The witch's chant becomes a description of the sky. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Saturn provides the vessel. Neptune, the dissolving brew. Aries, the flame. What is being cooked down is not merely personal illusion, but collective myth. The stories we tell about reality, authority, identity, and truth. Under this heat, the era begins to reduce, concentrate, and reveal its essence. We are living in a time when Shakespeare's witches, Hillman's Underworld, and Orwell's doublespeak all describe the same psychic weather. The sky is not only symbolic, it is diagnostic. The cauldron is boiling, the air is inverted, and the world is being remade through fire, pressure, and paradox. Global weather, when the world mirrors the sky. If the sky is chanting in reversals, the world is echoing it back. The global climate, political, technological, ecological, psychological, now behave exactly like the witch's cauldron, volatile, bubbling, and thick with contradictory signals. Pluto in Aquarius exposes the shadow of collective systems, while Uranus in Gemini fractures the narratives that once held those systems together. The result is a world where Orwell's slogans no longer read as dystopian prophecy, but as daily headlines. War is peace becomes the logic of endless conflict framed as stability. Freedom is slavery emerges in the way surveillance is sold as safety. Ignorance is strength appears in the valorization of anti-expertise and the weaponization of misinformation. These are not abstractions, they are the psychic weather patterns of our time. Consider the geopolitical landscape. Alliances flip overnight, enemies become partners, and long standing norms dissolve with startling speed. Nations justify aggression as defense, censorship as protection, and destabilization as order. This is Pluto in Aquarius, revealing the underbelly of collective power structures, the part that insists the world is safer when the truth is managed, curated, or inverted. And Uranus in Gemini accelerates the process, scattering contradictory narratives across the global airwaves until the distinction between fact and fiction becomes a pledge of allegiance rather than evidence. It is precisely what Orwell meant when he wrote that the authorities demand we reject the evidence of our eyes and ears. We see the same pattern in technology. Artificial intelligence, social media, and algorithmic governance now function as the modern equivalents of the witch's cauldron, vessels where data, identity, and desire are stirred together until new realities emerge. Innovation arrives with a double edge. Breakthroughs in medicine, communication, and automation coexist with deep fakes, disinformation, and the erosion of privacy. The promise of connection becomes the engine of fragmentation. The tools that liberate us also surveil us. This is the double of Uranus and Gemini. Every advancement carries its shadow, every revelation its distortion. Even the literal climate mirrors the symbolic one. Weather patterns swing between extremes. Seasons behave unpredictably. Disasters arrive in clusters. Saturn, Neptune, and Aries adds the ignition point, the sense that the world is not merely changing, but boiling. Structures dissolve, that's Neptune. Consequences harden, Saturn. And the fire of Aries accelerates the pace. The cauldron bubbles in the form of heat waves, floods, fires, and atmospheric anomalies that defy historical precedent. The earth itself seems to be speaking in the witch's language. What was once fair becomes foul, and what was once stable becomes volatile. And beneath all of this, the psychological climate shifts. People report feeling unmoored, overstimulated, and disoriented, as though the ground beneath meaning itself is unstable. This is Hillman's Underworld made collective, the sense that life is upside down, that familiar categories no longer hold, that we are living in a time of profound symbolic inversion. The astrology does not cause this, but it describes it with uncanny fidelity. The sky is not dictating events, it is mirroring the deep structures of a world in metamorphosis. Living inside the cauldron, human navigation in a time of metamorphosis. If the sky is mirroring a world in metamorphosis, then the task before us is not to flee the cauldron, but to learn how to inhabit it. Shakespeare gives us a clue in a line often overshadowed by the witch's incantations. When Macbeth steels himself for the unknown, he says, "Come what come may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day." It is not naive optimism. It is the recognition that even in a world of reversals, time still moves. Transformation still unfolds. And the human spirit is capable of enduring more than it imagines. This is the tone Saturn, Neptune, and Aries asks of us. Not certainty, but courage. Orwell, too, offers a surprising counterpoint to his own bleakness. Amid the machinery of doublespeak, he writes, "If there is hope, it lies in the proles." In other words, hope lies in the ordinary human being, in the untheatrical, unmanipulated instinct for truth, connection, and lived reality. Pluto in Aquarius reminds us that systems may distort, but people still feel, still sense, and still know. Uranus in Gemini fractures narratives, but it also opens space for new ones to emerge, ones carried not by institutions, but by individuals and communities. To live in this moment is to cultivate the kind of inner stance Macbeth gestures toward, a willingness to meet the unknown without collapsing into fear. Saturn, Neptune, and Aries teaches a new form of discernment, not the brittle insistence on certainty, but the embodied intuition that says, I can act from what is real enough. The fire of Aries tempers Neptune's fog and Saturn's rigidity into something more resilient, a clarity born from contact with the heat, not avoidance of it. And we must remember that doublespeak and inversion are not only external phenomena, they are internal weather patterns as well. Pluto in Aquarius exposes the ways we've outsourced our authority to systems that no longer serve us. Uranus in Gemini disrupts the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. The world is not the only thing being turned upside down. We are. But as Hillman also reminds us, the underworld strips away only what is no longer essential. What remains is the core. This is where another Macbeth line becomes unexpectedly relevant. When Banquo confronts the witch's riddles, he says, "The instruments of darkness tell us truths to betray us in deepest consequence." It's a warning, yes, but also a reminder that discernment is possible. We can hear the riddles without being ruled by them. We can recognize inversion without becoming inverted ourselves. This is the work of Pluto in Aquarius, to see the shadow without surrendering to it. And Orwell, again, offers a quiet counterspell. In the midst of surveillance and distortion, he writes, the best books are those that tell you what you already know. In other words, truth is not something imposed from above. It is something recognized from within. This is the human compass in an age of inversion. This is the inner authority that Saturn, Neptune, and Aries is forging. To move through this time with integrity, we must cultivate three capacities: discernment, adaptability, and depth. Discernment, to see through the fog without demanding premature certainty. Adaptability, to shift when the narrative shifts without losing our center. Depth, to remember that metamorphosis is not chaos. It is transformation with purpose, with meaning. And perhaps most importantly, we do not navigate this alone. Aquarius is the sign of networks, communities, shared intelligence. Gemini is the sign of dialogue, exchange, conversation. Aries is the sign of initiation, but no one walks into the fire without allies. The metamorphosis of the world is also the metamorphosis of how we relate, how we collaborate, how we imagine the future together. The cauldron is boiling, yes, but something is being forged. And our task is not to fear the heat, but to become the kind of humans who can withstand it, shape it, and emerge from it with something true. The fire burns, the cauldron bubbles. And so we arrive at the heart of it. The sky is not dictating events, it is mirroring the deep structures of a world in metamorphosis and mirroring the metamorphosis within us. Shakespeare understood this tension between fate and agency. Near the end of Macbeth, when all illusions have burned away, he offers a line that feels unexpectedly apt when we invert it for our moment. I am settled and bend up each corporeal agent to this terrible feat. Not terrible in the sense of doom, but in the older sense, awe-filled, immense, demanding. It is the stance of someone who has passed through inversion and fog and chosen to act from the core rather than the periphery. Orwell, too, leaves us with a subtle ember of human resilience. Beneath the machinery of distortion, he writes, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. Consciousness and action feed each other. Awareness is not passive, it is participatory. In a world of doublespeak and inversion, the simple act of seeing clearly, of refusing to abandon one's own perception, becomes a form of rebellion, a form of creation, a form of truth telling. This is the invitation of the current sky. Pluto in Aquarius asks us to become conscious of the systems we inhabit and the ones we unconsciously perpetuate. Uranus in Gemini asks us to stay agile, curious, and willing to revise our understanding as new information emerges. Saturn and Neptune in Aries ask us to ignite a new kind of courage, not the bravado of certainty, but the bravery of presence, the bravery of acting from what is real enough, even when the path is not fully illuminated. We are not meant to emerge from this era unchanged. Metamorphosis is not a crisis, it is a calling. The cauldron boils because something is being refined. The world inverts because old structures can no longer hold. The fog thickens because new sight is forming. And through it all, the human task is not to cling to the old maps, but to cultivate the inner compass that can navigate without them. In the end, the witch's cauldron is not only a symbol of chaos, it is a vessel of transformation. The world is simmering, yes, but so are we. And if we can meet this moment with discernment, adaptability, and depth, we will not simply survive the metamorphosis, we will participate in it, shape it, rise from it with something essential, something forged, something true. The fire burns, the cauldron bubbles, and we, humans, makers, meaning bearers, learn to walk through the steam with our eyes open.